Hello, welcome to Summerfest Online 2020. Thank you very much for coming along to view these presentations. Just a quick reminder that we have a number of exhibitors in the exhibitors hall. If you want to go along and have a quick browse, maybe do some shopping, then we'd love to see you. And a quick reminder too about our wonderful sponsors, Yayo Hemp Products and Butte Island Cheese. They're also in the exhibitors hall and they'd love to see you too. If you've enjoyed the show, please remember this is a free event, and if you'd like to make a small donation, you'd be very welcome. Please go to the Friends of VegFest page to make a donation. And a reminder too, we have another show in November, London Online, and in next March, Plant Powered Expo. And you can find out all about that on VegfestUK. Thanks very much and enjoy the presentation.
Welcome to the Vegan Approach Talk About Nutrition. My name's Liz Readle and I'm a volunteer with the Vegan Approach. I'm going to go through what the research tells us about general health information, but obviously if you've got specific questions about your own health, then do please consult a health professional. So the Vegan Approach, we aim to support people to go vegan and also to be healthy vegans. And this is a little picture of me and my companions, Keely and Joe. And what I want to do first of all is just sort of explain a little bit about me and my background. I started out as a radiographer for about 10 years, and then I moved into health informatics, looking at health data and research data. And I gained an MSc in health information. So I've always been interested in health information as such, and particularly nutrition. I've been a vegan for about 14 years, and before that I was a vegetarian for over 30 years. I'm not quite sure why it took me so long to go vegan, but there you go. I've got a University of Winchester certificate in plant-based nutrition, and I'm a member of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. And I really do recommend that you have a look at their website, where there's an awful lot of useful resources, particularly if you're a health professional, but also if you're a member of the public. The talk is all based on current evidence. There's a lot of misinformation online, particularly associated with things like protein, vitamin B12, iron, all sorts of things you'll hear this year. Things came up about choline, about fats. But what we do is we make sure that everything we say is based on research evidence and is as up to date as possible. And there's a lot of research that tells us that plant-based diets, particularly whole food plant-based diets, can improve your health and reduce your risk of chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, high blood pressure for instance, cancers, things like breast cancer, prostate cancer and bowel cancer, particularly linked to diet. And I will also, in the talk, go through how you would meet your nutritional needs for things like iron and protein, etc. Questions, we're taking those at any time in the chat room, but I'll be specifically available between 1 and 2 on Saturday and 1 and 2 on Sunday. And if you want to put your question to a live panel, we have a live panel at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So please do put your questions to us. If you're looking at this after the event and you want to put questions, then do post them to our Facebook page. So what are the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet? Well, hopefully live longer and reduce your risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancers, as I said, also non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is increasing in this country and in the Western world generally. And also dementia, which is our #1 killer, followed by heart disease. And as well as reducing your risk of these things, whole food plant-based diets actually can improve your mental well-being and also fitness, which we're finding out much more recently that plants can actually improve your recovery from exercise and improve your general fitness. And there's no reason why athletes can't adopt plant-based diets. So what do the experts say? So basically we just selected some of the research here that's fairly recent. You'll see the things that crop up are heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and dementia. But there's a lot more research as well. And if you look on plant-based health professionals, they will list quite a lot of it. So, okay then, so we've got all these benefits. So does this mean we can eat all of these things? Can we have our pies every day and our non-chicken burgers and our crisps? Well, the answer is yes and no. Not for every meal, not every day, no, because a lot of the benefits that we found with plant-based diets are from people who eat a predominantly whole food diet. So if you just concentrate on processed foods all the time, then you won't actually reap the benefits. That said, you can actually improve the quality of some of these things. So if you made your pizza at home, for instance, you could make it with either 100% whole wheat flour or 50% whole wheat flour, 50% white, put lots of different vegetables on, make your own tomato sauce and put some nutritional yeast on, and you'd have a really healthy pizza. You could have potato wedges instead of chips because that reduces the fat content, and you could keep the skin on the potatoes, or use sweet potatoes as well, and you get lots of beta carotene from sweet potatoes. So yes, you could improve the quality of them. Yes, you can still eat them, just not every meal. What we tend to do in the vegan approach is go with the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time you concentrate on eating whole foods, and that leaves 20% of the time where you can have your vegan junk food. So what is the difference between a whole food plant-based diet and a junk food vegan diet? Well, as I said, many of the benefits from the research have been from people who've had whole food plant-based diets, so we don't know what a sudden increase in processed vegan foods is actually going to do to our health. Clearly, they're probably no worse and probably slightly better than the animal-based processed foods because they'll have less saturated fat in, no cholesterol. But they'd still have a lot of fat, and they're still usually high in salt. And this country, which rather surprised me when I found out about this country actually eats more processed foods than any other European country. And if you go around the supermarket, you'll sort of see how apparent that is when most of the things that are available are actually processed. So if you emphasize whole foods much of the time, then that will still allow you treats, and you won't feel that same sort of deprivation that you would get if you just concentrated on whole foods 100% of the time. So you'd get the benefits without any of the sort of deprivation. So what is a balanced vegan diet? Well, the guidance tells us to eat 5 fruit and veg a day, but the research actually says that should be nearer 10. So try and aim for as many vegetables and fruits as possible, including leafy greens, brightly coloured fruits and vegetables, things like red cabbage, sweet potatoes, red peppers, beetroots, beets, those sorts of things are all brightly coloured, and they've all got an awful lot of nutrients in. Lots of green vegetables as well are excellent for our health, things like kale and broccoli. Carbohydrates, those are fine. You know, there's a lot of misinformation about carbohydrates. They're not the enemy as long as you concentrate on whole carbohydrates. So, you know, wholemeal flour and things like quinoa, nuts, seeds such as quinoa, and things like whole tubers, sweet potatoes again, and ordinary potatoes in their skins. Those are the sorts of things that are healthy carbohydrates. Proteins, not usually a problem. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later, but as long as you're aiming for sort of 2 meals a day, including sort of some good source of protein such as peas and beans, soya, nuts, things like that. Calcium-rich foods are fortified plant milks, yogurts, calcium-set tofu, and the fortified plant milks actually have as much calcium in as the dairy equivalent, and the same with the plant-based yogurts as well, most of them that are fortified. If you have calcium-set tofu, such as cauldron tofu, then you're getting a really good whack of calcium as well. So just make sure you're getting plenty of calcium-rich foods and plenty of omega-3 rich foods as well, such as linseeds and walnuts. So if you have a look at this, this is taken from plant-based health professionals who've come up with a plant-based Eat Well guide, which is based on the NHS's Eat Well guide. And if you have a look at this, you'll see that most of the plate is taken up by fruits and vegetables and whole grains and high fibre versions of vegetables such as potatoes, for instance. So you can have a lot of these things from your supermarket. They're not specialist shop type things. So things like Weetabix, shredded wheats, porridge, rye bread, frozen vegetables and fruits as well are great, particularly in winter where you can't actually get the same range of fresh vegetables and fruits. So have frozen peas in, frozen berries in your freezer. That's great. Tinned as well. Having tinned pulses, tinned beans in your cupboard is really good, because you can always think, well, I'll just add a few beans to my salad, sprinkle them over. So those are a really good addition to your cupboard as well. Having sort of like the protein-rich things like pulses, as I've just said, things like peanut butter, unroasted, unsalted nuts, tofu, which you can get from most places now, baked beans on toast. Baked beans are a really good source of protein, and having some calcium rich foods such as fortified plant milks, fortified yogurts, and the tofu, for instance, has also got calcium in. And having some good sources of plant fats such as avocado, nuts, olives, and vegetable oil. And having obviously plenty of herbs and spices that actually flavour your food, and plenty of fluids as well. Ideally not fruit juices, because those do tend to be quite rich in quite high in sugar. So what we wanted to do now is just give you a little bit of information about how you can, what help is available for when you start out as a vegan. We really rate Dr. Michael Greger, who some of you might have heard of. He's an American doctor, and he's written How Not to Die and How Not to Diet. And he's produced an app which you can download for your phone, which is free, and it's based on his daily dozen, the 12 foods that he recommends you eat on a daily basis. And those are things like flax seeds, beans, berries. Cruciferous vegetables are things like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, those sorts of things. And it's just a checklist type of approach, so you can actually sort of just check off every day whether you're getting Dr. Greger's daily dozen. And those are the things that are associated with the most health benefits from a plant-based diet. So that's a really good app, as is the Vegan Society Nutrition app. Again, it's free, and it's really good for new vegans or anyone who just wants to sort of make sure that their diet is meeting the nutritional needs. And again, it's a sort of checklist approach, but it's also good because it actually tells you what the sources of the nutrients are. So if you've forgotten what the good sources of calcium are, you can just check up on the app. So that's really good as well. So what I wanted to do now was talk a little bit about, well, what can you actually eat? It's all very well going through the theory, but how does that relate to the practice? So it's not a rocket science, you know, there are not sort of obscure things you have to go off to the health food shop for. If you like toast for breakfast, then have toast. Ideally wholemeal toast or rye bread, for instance, or Bergen bread, as I said. That tends to make your toast healthier. You could have something like tahini made from sesame seeds on it. That gives you protein and calcium. Or a nut butter, so peanut butter, almond butter, cashew nut butter. All of those things will actually give you protein and fill you up for longer as well. You could have oat-based cereal, so things like porridge, overnight oats. Really cheap, really, really healthy. Add some chia seeds, add some fresh fruit, add some frozen fruit, add some cinnamon. Again, really, really healthy, easy to make breakfasts. If you like pancakes, vegan pancakes are dead easy to make, and you could make them healthier by increasing the proportion of wholemeal flour Using buckwheat flour as well, that's a really healthy source of protein and other nutrients. And you could put some fresh fruit on, or some frozen fruit, or some nuts, sprinkle some nuts and seeds on as well, or a bit of cinnamon. Scrambled tofu is great. If you like tofu, and if you used to like scrambled eggs, then this is really good, and you can flavour it in whichever way you want. You can put spices in, you can put turmeric in, which is a really good spice, really healthy. You can add anything to it that you happen to have in the cupboard. So if you've got kale, or you've got spinach, or mushrooms, or tomatoes, onions, garlic, all of those things can go into scrambled tofu. And you can have that for breakfast, or you could have it for lunch as well. So as I said before, there's also things you can buy like Weetabix and shredded wheat. Mueslis as well, unsweetened mueslis are really good. And you could just have some sort of very quick cereal-based breakfast as well that's relatively healthy. Lunches could be anything from homemade soup, which is a great way of using things up and also makes it quite healthy. You could just add some beans in at the end if you wanted to just increase the protein content, have a bit of rye bread or toast with it, hopefully made out of whole wheat flour. With salads, just aim for sort of as many different ingredients as possible, particularly in winter when we don't have the same range of salad type ingredients. Look at vegetables and fruits as well, nuts, hummus, falafels, add in some nut butter in there if you would like as well. So try to have lots of different things in your salad. Sandwiches, you can have nut butters, you can have hummus, you can have avocado. Sometimes you can just mash up some cannellini beans with some olive oil and fresh herbs and garlic, and that means you've got an instant sort of bean type pate. So there's lots of different healthy things you can put in sandwiches. And don't forget fruit as well, because fruit is actually a really, really quick snack, and also it's useful to have as a pudding as well after lunch, and that would increase your iron absorption as well. So main meals, think of pulses here. So you could have, for instance, shepherd's pie made out of wheat lentils, or some green lentils, or mixed in with mushrooms. Curries are good as well. Curries, the Indian subcontinent have been using pulses for many, many years. So using things like peas or lentils are really good. Having something Eastern, so you could have a stir fry made with tofu or tempeh, cashew nuts, lots of different vegetables, miso, and you could have that with brown rice or buckwheat noodles or rice noodles. So there's lots of different combinations of grains and pulses that you could have. The bottom picture shows you a very quick, the bottom picture shows you a very quick pizza made out of a wrap. So you could buy a wrap that's maybe 50% wholemeal, 50% white, and just put on loads of different vegetables and some nutritional yeast. So what I want to do now is talk about macronutrients, the things that you need in slightly larger quantities. So things like protein. Yes, we need a fair amount of protein every day, but that's really easy to provide on a plant-based diet because most plants provide protein in varying amounts. As long as you're having adequate calories and a varied diet, then you should be fine as far as protein goes. Just eat some protein-rich foods in most meals. Things like pulses, soya, nuts, seeds, peanut butter. You don't need to stress about it too much, just have those regularly across the day. Fats, I mentioned this briefly before, short chain omega-3 fats, things like walnuts, linseeds, chia seeds as well are really good, and you can make puddings out of chia seeds. Hemp seeds as well are great for putting on cereals or puddings. Some people take an algal supplement, such as one with EPA and DHA in, but the research is still out on whether we actually do need that at the moment. But there doesn't seem to be a problem with it. If you want to take it, take it. But the research is still ongoing there. Fibre is something that most people, most non-vegan people, don't get enough of. And obviously, again, we're at an advantage here, and it's likely that fibre is linked to some of the health benefits that we see in plant-based diets. not just in terms of bowel health, but also in terms of other health as well, including mental health. So fibre is really important. It's not available from animal foods at all, and it's only available from plants. So just concentrate on having lots of different vegetables and fruits and having whole grain carbohydrates. And that's your macronutrients covered. The micronutrients are things that we need in smaller amounts. So things like calcium, I've mentioned before, lots of good sources of calcium. Just make sure that you're getting those on a regular basis. Omega-3, the best source is probably ground up linseeds or flax seeds. And Michael Greger advocates a spoonful of those a day, which is quite easy to do. You can just put it on cereal if you want to, or on puddings. Iron is something where people often are concerned about iron if they adopt a vegan diet. Yeah, iron from animals is better absorbed by the body, but that's not necessarily a good thing. The research shows us that iron from animals is possibly linked to an increased risk of cancer. So it's better to stick to iron from plant foods and just make sure you're getting good sources. All of the pulses, the beans, the lentils, etc., things like green vegetables, pumpkins, dried fruit as well, things like raisins. Blackstrap molasses is a good one for iron, if you like that on porridge. So those are all good sources, and if you want to increase the absorption, make sure you have vitamin C with your meal, and that could be something like having a small side salad with your main meal, following up your meal with some fresh fruit, or having things like peppers and green vegetables with the meal itself, just to increase the absorption. If you have a problem with absorption and iron and having low levels of iron, then try not to have tea and coffee with the meal. You can have it at other times, but just not with the meal, because that tends to decrease the absorption of iron. Other micronutrients are vitamin B12, which is not available from plants. So vegans must have either fortified foods and or a supplement. And we really rate the Vegan Society's Veg1, because that's got B12 and it's also got iodine, vitamin D and selenium in, and it's not dear. But obviously you can get B12 from Boots and Holland and Barrett and supermarkets as well. Things that have B12 added to it are things like nutritional yeast, when it says B12 on the tub, or things like Marmite and some cereals, and fortified plant milks as well. But if you're not having these in sufficient quantities, then it's best to supplement as well. Iodine and selenium are available from foods such as iodine from sea vegetables, selenium from Brazil nuts. But again, these are not always available in the amounts that we need in this country. And a lot of people, vegans and non-vegans, often don't get enough iodine and selenium. So Veg1 has those in, so that's great. Vitamin D is really important, and we've seen a lot about this with the recent COVID-19 situation, where the research is showing us that people with low levels of vitamin D, which is a lot of people in this country, are actually more at risk of serious complications from COVID. So do make sure you get your vitamin D, particularly in winter, and Veg1 has vitamin D added to it. So to summarise, it's very easy to eat a healthy whole food diet. Go with the 80-20 rule, and so 80% of the time concentrate on whole foods and you'll reap the health benefits. Make sure your diet is varied with lots of brightly coloured fruit and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, pulses, beans, nuts and seeds, and make sure you're getting a good source of vitamin B12 and D. Questions, as I said, I'll take it. You can post at any time in the chat room, but I will be available between 1 and 2 on both Saturday and Sunday. And we've got the panel discussion again on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And please do follow us on social media, share what we do, and do have a look at the website for more detailed information. And I'll just leave up the slide with the social media links on. so you can have a look at those. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for listening, and please do post your questions. Thank you.